The playoffs are on, and Fanatics merch is 30% off with Paze, a fast online checkout offered by banks and credit unions. So snag team gear like jerseys, caps, sparkly boots, even giant inflatable tube men. When you use Paze at checkout, your actual card numbers aren't shared with merchants, so you can lock in your gear with added security and let that giant inflatable tube man thrash with confidence. Use Paze with code PAYSPERKS for 30% off at Fanatics until March 31st, 2026. Terms apply at fanatics.com/Paze.
新的一年 ，McDonald's 的 Extra Value Meals 依然不变。现在享用咸香的 Sausage McMuffin with Egg， 外加薯饼和小杯咖啡，只需5元。For a limited time only, prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
This podcast is brought to you by Avocado Mattress. And if healthy, comfortable sleep matters to you, this is one organic brand worth knowing. That's because what you sleep on actually matters.
Most mattresses rely on synthetic foams and chemical materials that trap heat, break down over time, or off-gas. Avocado does it differently. Their mattresses are handcrafted with natural materials, organic latex, organic wool, and organic cotton, designed to be naturally cooling, incredibly supportive, and long-lasting. They're certified organic by GOTS and meet multiple non-toxic and safety certifications. Made for people who care about their health and the environment without sacrificing comfort. I love that Avocado proves you don't have to choose between comfortable, supportive sleep and your values. And now you can get up to 15% off all Avocado mattresses. Just go to avocadogreenmattress.com. Get up to 15% off at avocadogreenmattress.com. avocadogreenmattress.com.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. Let's start 2026 with a hard truth. There's no perfect time to build the future you secretly dream of, and there's no time to waste. With support from a Talkspace therapist, you can make this the year you bravely go out and grab what you need from life, whether that's outer rewards or inner peace. Just go to Talkspace.com to be matched with a licensed online therapist. You can start messaging with your therapist right away and schedule live virtual sessions over video, audio, or chat. Your Talkspace therapist can help you create personalized strategies for making the changes and achieving the goals most important to you. Talkspace accepts most insurance with an average copay of $15, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com and save $80 with code SPACE80. That's SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. Visit trustandwill.com for details.
Trust and Will.
My dad and I were always close, but some things we just didn't talk about, like his will. After he was gone, we found out he didn't have one, and it created a lot of stress during a time of grief.
Creating a will can be hard to think about, but avoiding it can lead to greater difficulty for the people you love. That's why Trust and Will makes estate planning simple. Create a will online in as little as 30 minutes.
Now, I have a will in place to make sure my loved ones are protected. With Trust and Will, it was easy and affordable, and I got peace of mind knowing my wishes are clear.
Trust and Will.
Get 20% off when you visit trustandwill.com/future. That's trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. trustandwill.com/FUTURE.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Ranked Squad, and welcome to Champions League Takeaway here on Ranked FC. My name's Jack Collins, and I am back at the wheel of this podcast after a couple of wonderful weeks away on my honeymoon. So thank you very much to the wonderful Mr. Dean Jones, who has been holding down the fort in my absence. How you doing, mate?
Oh, thank goodness you're back. Thank goodness you're back. What a disaster for everyone involved. No, it was okay. we held the place together, I think. It's like when your mum's coming home and you have a quick tidy up before she gets back. I think we managed to just squeeze in the podcast episodes in a relatively informed manner. Hopefully I managed to keep them all relevant. Obviously I had the good one with Sam and then I had a couple of my own. So, yeah, generally I think it went okay.
I thought they were all excellent, although it was really nice to hear you and Sam back on the same podcast. It's a long time since we've heard that.
It was really cool. It was really cool to be back talking to Sam, because talk on WhatsApp sometimes and stuff like that. But yeah, it was the longest we've chatted for a long time. And obviously, I don't hear, sometimes I listen to The Truth and stuff, but I don't hear his thoughts on everything every single week, like just generally, like when we would talk here on Patreon. So there were some things that he'd talk about, and I was like, oh yeah, cool, yeah, that's good. Like very Sam Ty views, but yeah, well informed and well described. And he seems to be doing very well, so that was nice to see.
Yeah, he is indeed. It's always good to have him about. The Truth will return next week for what it's worth. With all the Champions League, we just thought we'd have a breather and make sure everything comes back in the right manner. We're in a new studio, all sorts of things happening. So The Truth will be back with you next week. But there will be 2 Champions League takeaway episodes with you this week. The first of which, obviously, tonight after Tuesday's games, and the second of which will actually come out on Thursday rather than Wednesday night due to some commitments. So that's going to be a little bit later than usual, but there will be 2 episodes as ever on a Champions League week. And look, Dean, we could have started with so many different stories today, right? Like we could have started with Manchester City losing 3-1 to Bodø Glimt, their first ever win in the Champions League. We could have started with Real Madrid winning 6-1 at home to Monaco and turning the vibe of the Bernabeu back to something positive, at least for the time being. We could have started with Tottenham Hotspur, who might have saved Thomas Frank's job with their best performance under Thomas Frank in a 2-0 win over Borussia Dortmund. We could have started with PSG, the reigning champions, going to Lisbon and losing to Sporting. We could have started with Ajax, who've won a game, which is nice, but we're not going to start with any of that. We're going to start with the leaders, Arsenal. They are top of the pile, and so they will be top of this podcast. They went away to Inter today. They made a load of changes. They didn't necessarily need anything here to make sure that they finished in the top 2, because they have Cairo at home next week, and we'll assume that they're going to get something out of that game. But ultimately, they have gone there. They have extended it to 7 wins out of 7 in the Champions League. They have all but guaranteed top spot, depending if Bayern decide to go and win 7-0 or something tomorrow. We'll see. But ultimately, Arsenal have probably guaranteed themselves top spot with this win at Inter, and a very, very impressive performance to boot, I thought, from the Gunners. So that's where we're going to begin.
They're so good, mate. Like, Declan Rice walks off the pitch against Nottingham Forest and everyone's talking about it. He's looking to the sky, effing and blinding. Not again. He can't believe it. They failed to clinch the points that would help him towards the Premier League trophy. Here they are, a few days later, playing Inter Milan away, and he's laughing at full time because they've just beaten him 3-1 with pretty dominant display. Like, they are, as you say, on course to now go 100% in this phase of the competition. And they're on course to go and win it all, Jack. Like, people have raised doubts about Arsenal and they like to mock whether they've got the bottle to do it. But this is the best team around. And they are favourites to win the Champions League. I think tournament football probably suits them even more than the Premier League, because in the Premier League, there is a chance and a possibility and a tendency for the opponents to settle for the draw and to come up with a tactical game plan that frustrates, nullifies Arsenal. And that's why they'll often turn into set-piece FC, because they need that moment that gives them the breakthrough. But in the Champions League, I know this is a group phase, but still you're under more pressure to go and try and get a win than you are in normal domestic football. And once we get to the knockouts, I think it's going to be even more so that teams have to go and get goals against them. And I think they'll struggle to get it. Arsenal have just outclassed best team in Italy with a rotated team. A rotated team. It was comfortable in the end. Every problem that Mikel Arteta has is a good problem. Like, the big talking point will be, well, who does he start now? Gabby Jesus or Victor Gyökeres? Doesn't really matter. Gabby Jesus has just scored 2 and Victor Gyökeres has scored a banger. Like, Arsenal fans are worried about what's to come in the next few months, but you don't need to be worried. You got to enjoy this. This is as satisfying as anything you'll see all season. Going to a stadium like this and just putting Inter Milan to the sword. Gabby Jesus showed really good qualities in this game. I think the competition for places really changes things at Arsenal now. Obviously, Gyökeres has come under a lot of exposure. Like, people are looking at him very closely, studying his movements. Does he get into the box enough? Where's his finishing? This and that. And I've been one of those people. Like, is he a yard behind play? Why hasn't he got on the end of that one? Gabby Jesus comes into the picture here, played really well. His hold-up play was good. His dribbling was good. Drops deep well. He also manages to score those scruffy goals, if you like. You know, he gets that first goal and it's kind of instinctive. It's kind of like, it's just a striker's goal. And I love it. Obviously, Inter Milan come back into it. Sukic with a really nice goal to make it 1-1. But then again, Arsenal aren't willing to rest. They have this belief about themselves whereby they will just push on and look for the rewards that will exist. And I think, yeah, with Gabby Jesus, they looked better balanced. If I'm totally honest, I think that for much of the time that he was on the pitch, I did prefer it to how they look when they start with Gyökeres. I think I would be happy to go as far as saying that. And obviously he gets the goal that makes it 2-1. And at that point, you're thinking, right, they've got Man United at the weekend. Gabby Jesus starts that. And then Victor Gyökeres, late in the game, goes on this lung-bursting run as Arsenal form a breakaway. Gabby Martinelli plays this unbelievable outside of the foot long pass, which Gyökeres races onto, plays an unorthodox 1-2 with Saka, which he didn't know much about, but then just bends one into the top corner. Pure quality. It was like rolling back the tape and watching him play at Sporting again. It really was the sort of finish that we haven't seen much of since he joined Arsenal, and you saw loads of when he was at Sporting. And you're like, oh, there it is. There it is. He turns around. He's got the little glint in his eye. He's like, oh, what did I just do? Where did that come from? Shall I do more of that? And now I don't know who's going to start against Man United. Was he rested on the bench because he's starting against Man United? Probably. Has he just made sure that he starts against Man United? Probably. But there's obviously going to be a debate that follows this game about what Arteta should do. Ultimately, honestly, I don't think it matters. I think both of them are really, really good options, and both of them will cause Man United problems, and Arsenal can have confidence that they go and win that game. And
they can continue to ease Kai Havertz back into the fold.
Well, exactly that. Yeah, that's without even bringing Kai Havertz into the conversation, which is, a fantastic position for them to be in. I guess one thing that did surprise me, Jack, is that Saka played 90 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was obviously rested at the weekend, but yes.
I don't know about this, Jack. Are we going to see Saka start that game against United?
Well, as you say, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe they're so.
But
confident
that would be a big call. That would be a big call to leave Saka out of a game like that. I mainly ask him for my FPL needs because I've got Saka, and I'm not very convinced of the lad. He's been okay in FPL this season, but he's not worth the money in it, and that's the big reason I need to know whether he's playing. But look, overall, a great night for Arsenal again. They've shown us what they can do again, and I just want to reaffirm again that this is the best team in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, look, a couple of things just on a couple of points there. My first would be just a word of caution from an Arsenal perspective. And look, as you say, I think that Arsenal fans should be enjoying every moment of this, right? Like, they are top of the Premier League, they are top of the Champions League, they are in all four competitions with a genuine chance of winning them. I would also just like to pull you back to this time last year when Liverpool were top of the Premier League table, had won 7 games out of 7 in the Champions League, were in the League Cup semi-finals, and had just pretty comfortably cruised through the third round of the FA Cup. And as we know, look, if Arsenal ended with Liverpool's season from last season and they ended up winning the Premier League trophy, that would be enough. right? Like, we shouldn't knock teams for not winning everything. It's a really, really difficult thing to do. And I'm not suggesting that wouldn't be seen as a success. I think it would be, right, from an Arsenal perspective. And so, look, you give yourself as many opportunities to win as many things as you can, and then you do your best to get over the line in all of those. But I do think that Liverpool were in a similarly dominant position at this point of 2025, right? 20th of January 2025. I think we were looking at it and saying Liverpool could be on for the quad here. And obviously that unravels with the FA Cup and the Plymouth game. And, obviously they then lose the EFL Cup final a couple of weeks after that. They go out in the Champions League to, a side in PSG who end up winning the whole thing. Sure, fine, whatever. Like, I'm not suggesting that suddenly becomes a bad season, but just a note of caution on
of course, yeah.
It
is knockout football at the end of the day. And we saw last season how close they came. Declan Rice's great night when we thought it was heading their way and all of that sort of stuff as well for Arsenal. But I just don't think that they have that many actual flaws in their play. Maybe they do in their minds. I'm not saying that that's not going to be an issue. And I can't really assess that properly until we get there. But the strength in depth as well as everything else, like that is what they've really got to call upon.
Also, that's not a reason to criticize them. This isn't me suggesting that, they shouldn't be, looked at as someone who could win, a number of trophies, who could win a number of competitions. I think that they are, pretty much across the board, a very, very strong squad with an incredible amount of depth. And they have the ability to, they don't lose games very often, which is the key, right? Like, and I know that people talk about drop points in the Premier League and all of those things, fine. But like, actually in knockout football, not losing tends to win you games, right? Like, and it tends to actually get you through. And without going all Michael Owen, you can't squin if you don't score. Like, there is an element of, like, especially in these knockout phases, if you can, nick one and then not concede over two legs, the chances are things are going to fall in your favor. Now, look, I don't think Arsenal are going to win 4 trophies this season, but I think that they have a decent shot at all of them. I think they have more than a decent shot at a couple of them. And that puts them in a position of power and strength at this moment. But, even if it ended up with 1 trophy, I'm always just wary of that kind of, they could win it all. Because if you say that and then they win 1 trophy, or they just win the Premier League as Liverpool did last year, some people would look back and say, well, 3 trophies went by the wayside. I don't think that would be seen as anything less than success.
No, we're judging Arsenal differently to how we judge Liverpool in that sense.
Sure, and that's fine. I mean, look, there are positives from an Arsenal perspective as well. First time in 15 years that Inter have conceded 2 first half goals at home in the Champions League, which is a pretty nutty statistic that I very much enjoyed. Schalke in April 2011, I believe, it is the last time that Inter conceded twice in the first half at home in the Champions League, which is a pretty mad stat at this point. But, the other thing is that just on the Inter side of it, I thought that it was slightly disappointing from a number of players who I've been kind of hoping are going to step up, right? I thought that there was a little bit of kind of error in Bastoni's game. Luis Enrique, who's been excellent for a lot of this season when he's been given his opportunities, I thought was at fault for the opening goal. I'm not sure why he's there in that moment and why he's in that position to play Gabby Jesus onside. And look, there's a couple of bright sparks as well. I thought that Lucas Suchic's goal was excellent, and also he should have set up another one when he burst through and played in Marcus Thuram, and that maybe changes the face of the game from an Inter perspective. Pio Esposito as well, off the bench, looking excellent. I really do think that there is an all-round complete striker emerging in Italy here for the first time in a little while. I think he really is going to be a superstar. But look, the story of the night is Arsenal. And the story of the night is that they have guaranteed a top 2 spot. They are now in prime position to win 8 from 8 in the Champions League, and looking good for it as well. So as you say, a complete performance. I'm not trying to, talk down on anyone when I'm saying, like, let's all just hold our horses a little bit. I'm just trying to make sure that all the expectations. Yeah,
don't do that. Go and have a few pints and celebrate like you won the league.
Enjoy yourselves. That's the whole point. But yeah, well done to Arsenal. 3-1 away from home at San Siro is a remarkable result in pretty much any situation. 3-1 was the result as well in the Arctic Circle, Dean, where Manchester City fell at the hands of Bodø Glimt.
Wow.
It was an early kickoff.
Wow.
We don't normally put the early kickoffs in this first bit because they tend to be quieter games. This was anything but, right?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, we kind of watched this together as well, didn't we?
in some ways, yes. I mean, look, the first thing that everyone needs to know is that whilst this result looks wild on paper, it was fully and fundamentally deserved from a Bodø Glimt perspective. And look, you heard people talking afterwards, Pep Guardiola, Erling Haaland. Erling Haaland was like, yeah, they deserve to win. Unfortunately, that was just the way it was. It's not the homecoming I was looking for. And look, in freezing conditions, -9 degrees Celsius, I'll let you do the maths in terms of what that is in Fahrenheit. They were red hot. City melted in that ice. Glimt's first ever Champions League win, coming in exceptional circumstances. And look, it started really early, Dean. You know, in the opening moments of this one, a couple of decent looks for them. If the final ball had been better from Herg or from Jens Petter Hage, they could have had a very early lead, but it was just kind of that like final moment. And you're thinking, oh, is that going to come to haunt you in a game against opposition of this magnitude, of this quality? And City started to create a couple of half chances themselves, mostly from set pieces. And you're just looking at it and thinking, wow, not only is this the youngest City 11 that's ever been sent out in a Champions League game, but at the back, Rico Lewis, Max Alain, Kusanov, and Ait Nouri as the 4 players in that defensive line. And ultimately, City were taught a bit of a lesson in how to attack at pace and speed by their host. 2 lightning strikes. The punt is firmly intentional in 3 minutes, stunning City. And both of Bordeaux's first half goals were scored by Kasper Herf, who was excellent in terms of his positioning, in terms of the way that he occupied centre-backs, in terms of the way that he found his way on the end of things. But also, I think, Dean, it would be remiss to not say that both were unfortunately the fault of young Max Alain, who was starting at centre-back again. For the first goal, he steps out into midfield, he misses interception. For the second, he miscontrols the ball in his own half and he gets pickpocketed. Now, that wasn't the last thing that happened for both goals. They required lovely crosses from Blomberg, then lovely finishes from Herf to end with the ball in the back of the net. But on the first in particular, Dean, and this is something that I feel really sorry for Max Alain with, right? City caught 3-on-2 defensively. He steps out to try and make the interception. Well, what else are you going to do? You've got to try and step out to make that interception. And he needs help in those situations. He had absolutely no help at all. And look, it really, really shook City. They had to make an excellent save, Donnarumma, for moments after to deny the hat-trick to Kasper Herf. But it also rubbed off on Erling Haaland, who inexplicably screwed wide from 8 yards at the end of the first half. And I thought Pep would ring the changes at half-time. He didn't. And the killer blow came around the hour mark, and what a goal it was. Jens Petter Hage curling in the goal of the night, perhaps, across all of the games. Maybe there's one we'll talk about a little bit later that's in the conversation, to make it 3-0. And look, the fact that it came from Rodri losing the ball in midfield wasn't lost on me. I don't think it was lost on anyone. Very out of character. And then he rounded off a bad night by getting sent off for 2 yellows in quick succession. And to be honest, I don't think he can have any complaints about either yellow card. City had pulled one back before that. Ryan Cherky's deflected strike found a way in. But once they were down to 10, it felt like there was really no recovery available to them. As we say, like a very young defensive line, but I think Pep will be worried about how easily their game plan was taken apart by Bodø Glimt. Direct, clinical football. And in many ways, a little bit like the weekend, 3 might have flattered City a little bit here. This could have been 4 or 5, if not for Donnarumma, a couple chalked off for offside. And look, just as a final point, I thought while Blomberg and Hauge and Herf will take the plaudits, and correctly so, I thought Hakon Evjen in the midfield was absolutely immense for Glimt tonight. And I think there'll be a lot of people at Brøndby who had him on their books and will be thinking, how do we not get a tune out of this lad in the centre of the park? He can do a bit of everything. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I just wanted to give him some flowers because I'm sure he'll be missed out in all of the flowing praise that goes for some of the more creative talents in there as well.
Yeah, good night for Bodø. Bad night for the Bozos. That's what I've seen, Jack. City, what's happened? What was that?
You started writing headlines whilst I've been away.
I did see that. I did see that as a headline. I can't remember exactly what the headline was. Yeah, it was in one of the tabloids. It was like Bodø 3, Bozos 1, something like that. But yeah, it was like they're unrecognisable. Like, where have they gone? What's happened to Haaland? What's happened to Foden? Like, Rodri's 2 yellow cards in quick succession was a bit daft, but a bit unlucky. I don't know, a bit of both. Pep's pulling his hair out here. Like, I won't say anything too different from what I said on the back of the Man United game on the Patreon. Please join us over there if you haven't already. We'd love to see more of you in 2026. Please do come over. But obviously, in the United game, like, there was a level of inexperience and naivety and vulnerability about Man City defensively that United were able to take advantage of. Man United only had 30% of possession against Man City and were able to beat them 2-0. Tonight, Bodø Glimt have had 34% possession against Man City and they've beaten them 3-1. Ait Nouri was playing left back tonight for City, but Alain and Kusanov were in the middle. Rico Lewis at right back. Like, Rico Lewis, mate, is looking like a championship player at the moment. Like, I don't know what's happened to him, but he's had a severe drop from a player that had really, really elevated himself. Like, it feels like a big drop off that we've been seeing. So I'm surprised at how that's happened, and I'm slightly surprised Man City haven't considered selling him, if I'm totally honest, given like the ruthlessness of this team, the levels that have to be achieved consistently. I'm kind of surprised that he's hung around to be in this moment with them. City only made one sub. Marmoush came on for Phil Foden. It's somewhat surprising. How do they rebuild? What is the rebuild? Obviously, like, there are options. Like, on their bench unused, you had Doku, for example, and beyond this, you've obviously got Guéhi and Semenyo to come into the frame. Obviously, not available for the European game, but they got Wolves at the weekend, and you're like, I even said this earlier on the Patreon. I didn't know then whether we were getting like a 4-0 or a 1-1, and now I've seen this. I'm like, I don't know whether I trust the team anymore. This is a fantastic opportunity for them this season, and they are just throwing it away. And I'm really, really surprised that they find themselves in this moment.
They look threadbare, right? Like, and I don't mean in terms of the squad. Like, obviously, there's a lot of very, very talented footballers in this team. I'm not suggesting it's threadbare in the way that, like, Palace are having to put 5 youth academy products into the bench in order to just fill the squad. I mean, in terms of the ability to get their foot on and control a game, it feels very passive. And look, we know we all play football to different levels, right? But one of the things when you're running out of energy you do is try and keep the ball, right? And conserve it, and don't play passes that end up stretching you too far that you then have to play against the ball. And it feels to me at the moment like City's possession is incredibly pedestrian, that they are rotating the ball in ways that kind of in some ways feels almost reminiscent of like the very, very earliest days of what Pep was trying to do before his philosophy took root properly, where there's almost possession for possession's sake. And look, I hate that phrase in many, many ways, because sometimes I think it's overused as just a team who are trying to pull someone apart, right? And the ball is being shuttled from side to side and people are like, why don't we just kick it forward? It's one of my least favorite things in football. And I'm not suggesting that City are suddenly going to go long ball and start lobbing the ball over the top for Erling Haaland, right? Even though that's the way they were caught out, that's not the way that they play. And that's fine, right? That's not a criticism of the way they play. What I'm saying is that when City were at their best, they still recycled the ball a lot, right? They still had the majority of possession. It wasn't like they were suddenly a team that had 30% of the ball. But you could see the way that they were trying to pick locks. You could see the way that they were trying to pass the ball around to find openings and, squeeze teams and push them into shapes they didn't want to be in. At the moment, and in the last 2 games, it's felt to me like City are playing in a manner that kind of doesn't allow them to pull teams apart and literally sitting in a compact defensive shape, as Bodø did really, really well tonight. And their game plan was spot on. They were beautifully managed, as usual, Bodø Glimt, but they were able to find a way through City in a way that they haven't been able to find a way through other teams all the way through this competition. And that's got to be a worry from a Pep Guardiola perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't actually seen his quotes. I was just quickly trying to search for them, and my phone was being slow, so I haven't found them. But be really intrigued to see.
He did the big praise of Bodø. He was like, look, Europa League semi-finalists last year. We know they're a good team, etc. And look, they are a good team. Like this isn't to take away from what they've just achieved.
They are a good team, but they're Man City. Like this is one of the worst results in Man City's modern history.
Bodø are a good team, but they haven't won a game in the Champions League so far this season.
Yeah,
there are levels within the context of that. Yes, they're really well managed. Yes, they're really well organised. Yes, it's really hard to go to the Arctic Circle in January in -9 degrees Celsius and win a game. But also, the last time Erling Haaland played there, back when he was playing for Molde, right, he scored the only goal in a 1-0 win. And I will guarantee you that Molde side wasn't as good as this Manchester City side. And look, at the time, Bodø weren't as good as they are right now either. Fine. But like the difference in stratospheres here is really quite something. And it just felt like City just were off it from almost the minute go. And it's not the first time we're saying this, right? That's the thing that I think is interesting.
Yeah, look, Pep's said that we arrived and without some important players who give consistency to the team, and it's been this way since the start of the year. We're a bit fragile, and like that. All that I understand. Like I do agree with that. Like that is true. Like they had a lot of absentees for this, but they're playing Bodø Glimt.
Also, a Bodø Glimt side, just so we're clear, and look, maybe you can look at this in two different ways. Haven't played a game since Matchday 6 of the Champions League, because obviously they're on their break at this point. This is the point of their season, which is, and you can say, right, they were fresh, they were ready to go. City have played, 15 games in the last month and a half, fine. And you can look at that in two different ways. But also, if you would expect one team to look rusty, it would be the team that haven't played together in a competitive match for the best part of a month and a half, not the one that's played week in, week out. And maybe that's just the tiredness kicking in. We talked about the Club World Cup. We talked about all those elements. Maybe we need to take that more into account. But it didn't feel to me that City felt like a united front. And it felt like Bodø very much were one, despite not having that competitive kind of advantage.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of dismissed the idea that City were flat in this game. And as you say, he's given the credit to Bodø Glimt, but he says that there's a feeling for them at the moment that everything that can go wrong is going wrong in all of the details. He says that is a fact and you have to try to change it. That's strange, man. Like this is going, that sort of wording is going back to last season when City had their blip and they fell away. And that's concerning. And I'm very, very intrigued to see how Pep manages to turn this around, because honestly, that game now against Wolves at the weekend is so important to go and win. Because if they don't, and Arsenal do beat Man United, and that, that gap gets bigger, I don't know that you can come back from that. I don't, because you're gonna lose more points across the rest of the season on this, from this inconsistency that we're seeing.
From the evidence we have in front of us, right?
Yeah. So very strange. But congratulations to Bodø Glimt. Like they did genuinely play well. We were recording a Patreon episode at the time the game was on, so we both kind of had an eye on it while we were recording. And I was like, "Oh my god, they've scored again! They've scored again!" Like it was unbelievable. The third goal was a brilliant goal.
Shouts out to Jens Petter Hauge, the truth, the original truth in so many ways. What a footballer. And delighted to see him playing his best game again after those weird years at Milan and Eintracht as well.
Jamie Carragher shouted something like Jens Petter keeps getting better or something like that.
I mean, to be fair, that's quite good.
It's one of the best things he's ever come out with on that show, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, fair enough. That's actually not bad. Right, we're going to take a break there. When we come back, we're going to go to the Bernabeu, which was poisonous at the weekend, and see how Real Madrid got on against Monaco. Make sure you stick with us.
新的一年 ，McDonald's 的 Extra Value Meals 依然不变。现在享用咸香的 Sausage McMuffin with Egg， 外加薯饼和小杯咖啡，只需5元。For a limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
This podcast is brought to you by Avocado Mattress. And if healthy, comfortable sleep matters to you, this is one organic brand worth knowing. That's because what you sleep on actually matters.
Most mattresses rely on synthetic foams and chemical materials that trap heat, break down over time, or off-gas. Avocado does it differently. Their mattresses are handcrafted with natural materials, organic latex, organic wool, and organic cotton, designed to be naturally cooling, incredibly supportive, and long-lasting. They're certified organic by GOTS and meet multiple non-toxic and safety certifications. Made for people who care about their health and the environment without sacrificing comfort. I love that avocado proves you don't have to choose between comfortable, supportive sleep and your values. And now you can get up to 15% off all avocado mattresses. Just go to avocadogreenmattress.com. Get up to 15% off at avocadogreenmattress.com. avocadogreenmattress.com.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. Let's start 2026 with a hard truth. There's no perfect time to build the future you secretly dream of, and there's no time to waste. With support from a Talkspace therapist, you can make this the year you bravely go out and grab what you need from life, whether that's outer rewards or inner peace. Just go to Talkspace.com to be matched with a licensed online therapist. You can start messaging with your therapist right away and schedule live virtual sessions over video, audio, or chat. Your Talkspace therapist can help you create personalized strategies for making the changes and achieving the goals most important to you. Talkspace accepts most insurance with an average copay of $15, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com and save $80 with code SPACE80. That's SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. Visit trustandwill.com for details.
Trust and Will.
My dad and I were always close, but some things we just didn't talk about, like his will. After he was gone, we found out he didn't have one, and it created a lot of stress during a time of grief.
Creating a will can be hard to think about, but avoiding it can lead to greater difficulty for the people you love. That's why Trust and Will makes estate planning simple. Create a will online in as little as 30 minutes.
Now, I have a will in place to make sure my loved ones are protected. With Trust and Will, it was easy and affordable, and I got peace of mind knowing my wishes are clear.
Trust and Will.
Get 20% off when you visit trustandwill.com/future. That's trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. trustandwill.com/future.
Welcome back to Champions League Takeaway here on Ranks FC. Jack Collins and Dean Jones alongside you. And Dean, I want to go to Real Madrid. At the weekend, they won. They closed the gap to Barcelona at the top of La Liga with a win over Levante. And yet, it felt like the whole place might well have been on fire. And so I was interested to see what happened when they turned up again on a Tuesday night in the Champions League, which, as we all know, is the competition that matters most to Real Madrid, to the club, to the players, to the fans, to the president, all of it. Well, the answer is that they went to town in so many ways. A 6-1 win over Monaco. But I kind of want to start at the top of this one because it was an intriguing game in many ways. So I made my notes as we went along on this one. And the atmosphere before the game, I was really excited to turn on and just sort of get that 10 minutes of what it sounds like. It didn't feel anywhere near as aggressive from the fans as it was at the weekend. I didn't think it would be, given that relationship with the Champions League. But also, with that said, it wasn't quite the fervent Bernabeu we're used to on nights like this. If anything, I thought it sounded a bit flat. Like that, there were bits of singing, but there were breaks, there was quiet periods. And, as the game kind of built up, you were like, wow, this is not quite it's going to be a long 90 minutes for anyone who turns up to this ground in the way that we know it has been, especially in this tournament in the past. I was interested with what Arbeloa did with the lineup. It was interesting to see Valverde at right back. Well, he hated that when Xabi Alonso was in charge. So I wonder how he's feeling about this one. I mean, look, there aren't many other options. I will give Arbeloa that. Camavinga played left back with Carrera suspended, and Goulet came in to start after his impressive second half cameo at the weekend against Levante. Also, the Gonzalo Garcia on the wing experiment ended quite quickly. Mastantuono taking his spot on the right-hand side. And it was intriguing to see how it kind of played out. But within 5 minutes, right, like it was very obvious how Madrid were going to go about their business in this one. Mbappe sweeping them in front against his former club, his 10th goal of the campaign in the Champions League. Spoiler, he would later get 11th. But this was nice from Mastantuono. He burst down that right flank. Good exchange with Valverde, who continued his run from right back. He then feeds the ball back into Valverde. Good dummy from Jude as well. He lays it off for Mbappe to stroke home. And look, I thought it was a really nicely worked goal. Some really nice combinations. The run over the ball from Bellingham was really smart. And then Valverde bursting into the box from that right back position. Maybe that's what he was worried about. He wasn't given the freedom to do that quite as much under Xabi Alonso's system. They did still feel slightly vulnerable. I thought Real Madrid at the back, one quick ball sent Balogun racing away in behind, but desperate defending stopped him at the last second. And Ansu Fati, who started in the number 10 role, had a chance to do an incredibly funny thing and score at the Bernabeu to equalise, but he snatched at his chance. And it went well wide. And then Real Madrid hit Monaco with an absolute lightning break. And when I said there was another goal that might win goal of the night, right? It's not because it's a similar goal to Jens Petter Hauger's, which was just a glorious strike, right? But this, as a team goal, was glorious, flowing, technicolor, attacking football at its finest. The kind of thing that turns fans back on side, a real masterclass of a goal. So it's a gorgeous turn from Camavinga in the middle, a little Cruyff flick, plays into Arda Güler, who first time slides it through for Vinicius Jr. on the wing. Mbappe's read this, seen it. He's 5 yards in front of the defenders. Vini slides it across and Mbappe taps it home. It was described on the goal show as a Harlem Globetrotters type of goal. And you know what? I agree, Martin Keown. It was the kind of thing you watch and you're like, wow, okay, that is scintillating. And look, whilst I did think that Mbappe was very close to being offside, I'm glad he wasn't, because it was a wonderful, wonderful goal. And it'd been really, really annoying if he just strayed offside for the sake of being offside. But it was the kind of goal that you kind of takes your breath a little bit. You're like, oh, okay, that's what they come to see. And there hasn't been enough of that from a Real Madrid perspective over the last couple of months. It was very, very, very impressive. And look, it didn't mean that everything was done. Jordan Teza hit the bar with an absolute gorgeous curler from about 30 yards, just as kind of little reminder that Monaco weren't completely out of it. And whilst that halftime score was 2-0, the stats were pretty even, as were the chances that came for both sides. Just Kylian Mbappe was on the end of Madrid's chances, rather than, the Monaco forwards who just didn't have the same kind of, let's say, composure. But we spoke about that one from Fati, snatched that. Balogun just not getting quite free in the way that Mbappe had managed to for Madrid's second. A couple of interesting bits. There were still some whistles for Vini in particular, although they were starting to be drowned out by applause by the end of the first half. And ultimately, he went kind of Super Saiyan in the second half. So he's already got one assist, right? But Monaco hope of a comeback demolished within 5 minutes of the restart. Real Madrid's third goal, really nice from Dean Huyson, steps out of defense, wins the ball high up, plays the ball in, and lovely work from Vinicius, who spins his defender, fakes the shot, and lays it off to the on-rushing Mastantuono, who's obviously still on the comeback train himself at the moment, steaming into fire across the keeper, make it look really, really easy. Really nice goal. And look, it was pretty much plain sailing from that moment onwards. The fourth was almost easy. One back in midfield, over to Vinicius Jr., and the cross turned into his own net from Thilo Kehrer. So a hat trick of assists from the Real Madrid number 7. And that wasn't quite enough. So he decided he'd like his name on the score sheet as well. And it felt like one of those nights where what Vinicius wanted, Vinicius got. Because, just really, really, really good. Monaco play themselves into trouble again. This time he's a bit hungrier, beats his defender, screams one into the near top corner. Absolutely brilliant finish. And it's 4-0 and you're thinking, well, that's that. Credit, to be fair, where it's due for the Monegasques, who continued trying to create, and they did get a consolation goal. Real Madrid caught out their opponents, trying to play out in an impossible situation. One pass too many, got them caught for Teza to score. Really weird, actually. Courtois trying to play like a really cheeky little dink out from his area, and Teza ultimately intercepts it and just tucks it home. But sometimes it's best not to poke the bear. Elena Kena curled one over from the edge of the box just after that. And then when Mbappe bashes a free kick into the wall, Monaco try and break as Mbappe slips. It's one back. Fede plays in Jude Bellingham, who rounds the keeper and tapped home. And actually, I think maybe the most interesting part of that sixth goal, because it wasn't going to really affect anything in the long term or in the kind of grander scheme, was Hey Jude rang round the Bernabeu afterwards. And for a player who was one of those who was whistled at the weekend, I thought that was very interesting. Peace appears to have been achieved for the time being. Vinicius clapped off, Bellingham's song sung, and Mbappe obviously coming out as a leader earlier in the week and being like, look, I don't mind you whistling, but whistle the whole team. He was like, I understand that we've not been good enough, but whistle us all, don't whistle individuals. And maybe people are listening because this was a performance to behold from Real Madrid. Now, it's not all perfect. They still give up a lot of chances. And also they had 5 shots on target and scored 6 goals, which is quite funny within itself. But a really, really impressive performance. And the way that they carved Monaco open at times was breathtaking.
Who do you think it is that like boos and whistles them, right? Like, is it the people that go there every week? Do you think it's like the Madrid tourists? What do you reckon?
I don't think the tourists are just whistling. Like, that just doesn't really make any sense, does it?
But there was like a message before the last game, like from like the diehard, the ultras, like not to do that. And like they were still ringing around. I just don't know who thinks it's a good idea.
Well, I spoke about this on the Patreon a little bit, right? Like after the last game, Arbeloa was asked about the whistles and the chants of Florentino out. And there was a couple of banners, I don't know if you saw them as well, around the streets of the Bernabeu of saying, Perez out, before the game. And Arbeloa basically was like, these are not people who support Real Madrid. They're people who have come here to attack Madrid. And I was like, I just don't think that's the case. I don't think Barcelona fans, for example, have just rocked up to watch you play Levante to shout Florentino out. I don't buy that, I'm afraid. Like, there is an element of this where people, I think, and look, it's an interesting debate and a dichotomy, and it's something we can go into on another podcast, but about the fact that I wonder if Xabi Alonso had a bit more support within the Real Madrid support than actually people gave him credit for. And look, there wasn't loads and loads of like things in his honor, and Florentino never really came out and defended Xabi Alonso. He, kind of went down that path of blaming all the referees and claiming corruption against the club, et cetera, et cetera. And look, that's fine. Like, you can believe what you want. But like, I think that there might have been a bit more goodwill towards Xabi Alonso than actually everyone has kind of given credit for within the actual match-going fan base. And we talk about this sometimes, right? Real Madrid is an ecosystem within itself. Real Madrid exists. Like, there is Real Madrid TV 24/7. If you want to just watch world news through the prism of Real Madrid, you can, right? If you're a Madridista and you want to watch everything through the lens of Real Madrid, it's possible to watch world news on that channel, right? Like, and it's all spun within the different elements of what the club is, etc. And there will be people in that who, this is world and life and all of those things. And that's totally fine. But the point being that I don't think that everyone is quite as on board with the project, etc., as sometimes we're led to believe by perhaps the masses on social media. And we often talk, especially when we, talk about clubs in the Premier League and clubs that we've spent lots and lots of time around, about the difference in attitudes. We talk about a lot of Man United between the people who are actually at Old Trafford and the wider Manchester United supporting, community. And that's not to put one above the other or anything like that, but it's to just show that there can be differences. And I wonder if in the wider community of Real Madrid, there's a slightly different view on Xabi Alonso, for example, as there is perhaps at those who are at the Bernabeu week in, week out.
Yeah, I think there is a part of like these super clubs and the fans attached to them that feels like a Netflix like drama. And so like they feel the need to engross themselves in the storylines. And I do feel like sometimes there genuinely are fans that I sometimes think that actually that fans do want their team to lose. I think that has been a rising trend in the game in the last 10 years. Probably stemmed from an English perspective through Arsenal fan TV at that point.
I think maybe that was the caveat, and through it was actually where it was seen the most. I don't know if that's where it stems from, if you will.
I mean, Madrid's obviously always been different. They've always had the white handkerchiefs and all that kind of thing. So it's definitely lived beyond that. But I feel like now it's considered to be more acceptable to go to a game and boo and jeer your team. But I just always think, but what do you do when they score? Because if they win by 5 or 6, are you cheering those goals? Are you like, oh, fair enough, Perez can stay? Or are you still...
Maybe you have to be one back.
I don't know what you do in those moments.
Look, mate, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not one of them.
I'm going to talk about another team now anyway who has the same problem. Let's move on to
another team in white.
Game. Another team in white, another team of fans who generally have hated their team. But for once, they don't. Tottenham have won in the Champions League against Borussia Dortmund, 2-0. And this is one of the most...
fourth in the Champions League.
Yeah, and it's one of the most Spursy things you'll ever see. All they had to do was lose tonight and Frank was gone. They've won 2-0. He might still be gone, to be honest, but it's much
put in
harder.
The best performance perhaps of his entire tenure as manager.
This makes it much harder to part ways. Look, Dortmund weren't very good, but nevertheless, Tottenham have to take these positives where they come. And they go into the Frankfurt game next with automatic qualification in their own hands. Like, they're going to be, I think, 7th. If worst case, I think they'll be 7th at the end of this game week. So they could avoid the playoffs. That's massive because Tottenham will probably lose the playoffs. I say that. They are now 24 games unbeaten at home in Europe. How? How have they managed to do that? Like, they're rubbish at home.
It's just who we are, mate.
It's absolutely ridiculous. This football club is just crazy. And look, we'll park the Frank out conversation for now because this is a occasion where it doesn't seem relevant because Tottenham actually cheered their team off at half-time and full-time. You haven't seen that much. And I think that sits side by side with the Real Madrid thing. Like, if you're not cheering on your team in a game like this, then you've got issues bigger than just wanting the manager gone. Like, you've got issues. Like, I find it hard when fans want their team to lose, but there was definitely a section on social media of Tottenham fans who were like, oh, no, he's going to stay now. It's like, you've just beaten Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League and you're going to progress to the next phase of the Champions League. That's what football's about. Like, if Frank's that bad, he'll still go, right? It's not. They won't be. The knee-jerk reaction to this result doesn't totally decide whether he stays or goes. He might lose to Burnley at the weekend and then he'll be gone anyway, right? He might even be gone between now and then. Who knows? They just need to find somebody else to do the job. Very interesting. But look, the game itself, Thomas Frank hasn't been assertive enough this season. But there was a sense of energy. They played on the front foot. Their high press really put Dortmund under pressure in the early stage of this team. And while everybody kind of smirked at the idea of Jed Spence playing out wide on the attack, actually had quite a good impact, to be honest. It worked pretty well. Now, obviously, Tottenham do start to take control of the game. And I think whenever a goal goes in at Tottenham, there's always this there's a sense of relief, but there is also a sense of what's going to happen. Goal number 1, Odegaard gets the ball in and Romero steers it in.
He was brilliant, by the way, Wilson Odegaard. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal down that right-hand flank.
Yeah, he's been good and bad this season. I still don't know what a Wilson Odegaard is in its full capacity. But in terms of the potential of him, it's all there. I do like him as well. And I think Tottenham fans will like him more after this game today. Ultimately, Jack, the game was ruined after 25 minutes because of the red card. Svensson gets a red. I don't like it. I don't like red cards like this. He goes for the ball and kind of lands his foot onto the side of the player's leg. I've actually it's eluded me now as we're recording whose leg he landed on. But nevertheless, his leg goes, and it's just not what he's intending at all. He's not intending to make a tackle. He just the ball's slightly out of his reach, and he goes to go for it, and the ball goes up. And the freeze frame, as soon as the ref looks at VAR, is his foot planted on the calf of the Tottenham player. So as soon as the ref sees that, he's like, oh, wow, that's a dangerous challenge. But we see it in far, you're like, no, just let him off with a yellow. It doesn't have to happen. Thomas Frank must have wanted to do a cartwheel in that moment. It was game over. It was oh my goodness, we have a chance here to kill off this game because Dortmund aren't playing that well. They're 1-0 down. We've got a real opportunity. And then 10 minutes or so later, Solanke stumbles the ball in for goal number 2. Odegaard puts the ball in. Solanke almost trips over his own feet, but manages to stick the ball in off the post. one of the most unconventional finishes you'll ever see. But nevertheless, he was in the right place. He manages to steer the ball in the right direction and it goes in the goal. So, yeah, I was, as a neutral, I felt like the red was annoying. But ultimately, it led to Tottenham getting a win they wanted. Now, Dortmund did come into the game a bit more in the second half. They did try to assert themselves more, push themselves into the game. Couple of opportunities. One that stands out in my mind was a free kick that went just wide, but ultimately Tottenham have managed to get over the line and secure a win that is very important and also ends Dortmund's 7-game unbeaten run across all competitions. Dortmund aren't having a great season themselves. That's more than fair.
It feels like pretty weird that they're second in the Bundesliga, more kind of because of the chaos behind them. They've got 6-point buffer to Hoffenheim in third, but the chaos behind them as opposed to anything else, they haven't been particularly convincing. They weren't particularly convincing in their win over Pauli at the weekend. Ricky J. Jones scored an equaliser and then gave away the penalty that ends up being taken off. It was Odobert, by the way, who was fouled for the yellow card. I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but it was that
Odobert was everywhere.
Odobert was everywhere. But there have been a lot of unconvincing performances from Borussia Dortmund recently. And look, some better than others. But, there's some very, very odd games in the mix. And it felt like a pretty comfortable game for Spurs in terms of they were going to, Dortmund were going to come at them. Right, the game was going to open up, and Spurs feel like they're better in those situations because they have players who can play on the counter. Now, also that involves Thomas Frank selecting the best team, and he did that to an extent. Right, he selected the players that needed to play. He was a little bit hamstrung by some of the selection dilemmas. Obviously, no Mickey van der Ven. You're wondering, is that going to give Adeyemi the kind of license to race in behind? But I thought Spurs looked like they were in an interesting shape. Obviously, you spoke about Jed Spence playing, on the wing, but also, Destiny Udogie felt like he had the option to get forward. There was a moment in the first half where he races in behind, which I thought was interesting. And maybe it's the fact that Jed Spence was there in front of him. He was like, I know he'll cover me if I go. It just felt a little bit more fluid. And Bergvall and Gray in the middle worked nicely. This was, going to be an interesting midfield battle. I thought Xavi Simons had one of his better games. Solanke did well. But
Xavi Simons was good.
I'm just a little bit still, a bit perplexed as to what happens here. And look, in some ways, and look, with a slight tongue in cheek, it feels like Thomas Frank saw Ange Postecoglou finish 17th and win the Europa League and went, what if I get relegated and win the Champions League? How can I one-up him? How is it possible for me to do one better?
Yes,
because some of the performances in the Champions League have been so much more convincing. And maybe, again, it's a competition that suits them because teams are a bit more likely to come out and open up. And therefore, they get those opportunities to hit teams in different ways. But I'm just a bit confused as to what Spurs are at the moment. And that doesn't take away from this, which was a good performance. As you say, I think it's harsh, but I think it is a red. He doesn't get the ball. I've got a red card for you later that I genuinely don't think is a red. I think this one is a red card because he doesn't get the ball. I know it's not malicious. If he touches the ball, I think you've got an argument.
At all. There's no intent at all. And that's what I
hate
about
he totally misses it.
Those sorts of red cards, it's just not what he meant, and it's no one's in agony. There's just no ill will anyway here. Can we just have some common sense at some point? I know we can't, but can we please at some point try it?
Nah, mate, that ship sailed, I'm afraid. But a really, really good win for Spurs, fourth in the Champions League, as we say, as currently speaking, and with their destiny in their own hands as they go into that final game against Eintracht. So we shall see. We shall see how things play out. Right, we're going to take a little break there. When we come back, going to round up all of the rest of tonight's Champions League action for you as well.
新的一年 ，McDonald's 的 Extra Value Meals 依然不变。现在享用咸香的 Sausage McMuffin with Egg， 外加薯饼和小杯咖啡，只需5元。For a limited time only, prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
This podcast is brought to you by Avocado Mattress. And if healthy, comfortable sleep matters to you, this is one organic brand worth knowing. That's because what you sleep on actually matters.
Most mattresses rely on synthetic foams and chemical materials that trap heat, break down over time, or off-gas. Avocado does it differently. Their mattresses are handcrafted with natural materials: organic latex, organic wool, and organic cotton. Designed to be naturally cooling, incredibly supportive, and long-lasting. They're certified organic by GOTS and meet multiple non-toxic and safety certifications. Made for people who care about their health and the environment without sacrificing comfort. I love that Avocado proves you don't have to choose between comfortable, supportive sleep and your values. And now you can get up to 15% off all Avocado mattresses. Just go to avocadogreenmattress.com. Get up to 15% off at avocadogreenmattress.com. avocadogreenmattress.com.
Welcome back to Ranks FC. It's that part of the show that we all miss where Jack just rounds up every kick that happened in the last few hours and tells us about everything we need to know. I don't know how you do this, but go.
Yeah, I'm doing my best, trying to watch all of these games at once. Look, we said at the top, right, we could have started with this one. Sporting beating PSG 2-1 at the Alvalade in Lisbon. Huge win for Sporting this. Their home form continues to impress in the Champions League. They moved into 6th for the time being, which is kind of nuts some way. And look, they'll call this daylight robbery in PSG supporting circles. And they have a right to be frustrated. But I thought Sporting played this really, really well. PSG thought they'd taken the lead pretty early on when Zaire Emery headed home from a little dink from Fabian Ruiz. But it was VAR for a foul in the build-up correctly, I think. Although I think that one is open for debate. It's one of those where it's a couple of, maybe not phases, but like a couple of passes before the goal actually gets scored. But I think it is a foul. I think Anthony Taylor makes the right call. But that was the kind of culmination of what was pretty much one-way traffic in the first half. Sporting camped in their own half to try and take the sting out of it, and it worked, in fairness. And they found very brief spells, working hard, really, really hard defensively to keep their kind of illustrious visitors at bay. But you kind of felt that there was a goal there for PSG, which was on the way. And PSG were denied again by the officials when Dembele headed in a beautiful cross from Desire Doué. But he was quite clearly offside for this one. And as the game went on, I thought it was interesting because Sporting started to find a bit more confidence going forward and causing problems in those spaces in behind PSG, who were really, really pushed quite far forward. And when Sporting forced their first corner around the 60th minute, they took the lead. And look, they were a bit fortuitous in the manner of the goal, no doubt about that. But they'd grown into the game after a first half where they were completely pinned back. And the ball's cleared from this corner. Jenny Katamo sort of spanks one, hopefully, at goal. And the block just spins to Luis Suarez, not that one, who tucks it away really calmly under pressure. And suddenly they have the lead in this game. And you're thinking, wow, okay, all right, this is going to be interesting to see how PSG respond to it. Now, they were always going to pile on the pressure and they introduced Kvicha Kvaratskhelia on that left-hand side. It pays dividends almost immediately. And if I tell you, Dean, that the Georgian cut inside and whipped one into the far corner off the left, like, you don't even need to see it. You know, you don't even need to see the goal now. You know what happens. You've like, you from that description, you know exactly what this goal looks like.
Yeah, you've done a good job there, mate. It's I saw a little bit of this. I haven't seen that moment, but they were kind of reviewing it, obviously, on the Champions League show.
It's a great goal, right? Like it's a really, really good goal. And there is kind of element of with Kvicha that you know exactly what he's going to try and do. But it's just one of those things you can't stop. That shift onto the right foot, curls it into the top corner, and it's brilliant. So it's 1-1, right? And as PSG pile it on, Sporting start to find more and more gaps in behind. And whilst it still looks like PSG are the more likely to score the winner, Sporting nab it right at the end after some slightly questionable goalkeeping from Chevalier. So Trincao is set up for a strike at the edge, and actually Sporting started to find joy down that left-hand side, which is where this comes from. And they keep the ball there, they recycle it inside, and it comes to Trincao on the edge. And he hits it. Chevalier sort of punches it right up in the air, and it allows Suarez to nip in and head into the far corner for a famous win. And basically, you know, Sporting's destiny is now in their own hands. Now their away form has been nowhere near as good as their home, right? 4 wins from 4 at home. I think it's 2 losses and a draw away from home. And they have, you know, a difficult task on their final day as well. But they've won, as I say, 4 of 4 at home. They're on the verge of an automatic spot. Mm-hmm. And they look really good under Rui Borges. They've looked really good all season. Now, they're not top in Portugal because Porto have been magnificent this season, right? Like absolutely phenomenal. But I do think in terms of the way they've played in the Champions League, their comfortability with sitting in a low block, their ability to hit the spaces, on the counter, it just feels to me like no one is going to want to play this mob in the knockouts. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Sporting get on with that.
Yeah, I thought they did well. They showed the end of the game. Obviously, when the others finish, they flip over to another game and you get to see the last stages of it. Obviously, like PSG are starting to become a bit desperate, but Sporting have got something about them, man. Like they've got a real character about them. It looks like. I mean, I obviously only saw sections of this particular game, but I've seen other games across this season. They've got something that's very hard to replicate, and in a season when the traditional good big clubs are struggling for identity and character, Sporting have got an edge here that I think a lot of other teams are lacking.
They're quite good at the dark arts, right? And look, they had a little bit of a wobble after Amorim left, and then Højbjerg took over, and he's done a really, really good job of just stabilizing the ship and going back to the basics that made them very good. They've replaced well the players they've left. Gyökeres scored so many goals. Luis Suarez comes in, plays the exact same role. He's a little bit nasty. There's a moment at the end where he pulls back Kvaratskhelia, who's trying to break away, and he's there just been like hands up in the air, being like, I know I'm getting a yellow card. He gets body checked. I think it's Ousmane Dembele, and he just falls on the floor and lies around for like 2 minutes. You're like, why have you done that? Like, you knew he was going to do that. As soon as you touched him, he was going to hit the deck because they're trying to, play out the last 2 minutes of extra time against a team who are currently European champions. They just play those kind of margins quite well. And I think that they're a smart unit. I don't think they're going to win the Champions League, right? I'm not sitting here saying that. But I do think that they've done a good job of maintaining their identity from one management cycle to another. And they look very, very good at home. They've been really, really good at home all season. So credit to them. I mean, let's go across to Villarreal against Ajax. A 2-1 to Ajax here. And look, the start of the game looked very different because Villarreal were all over them. 2 brilliant stops from Vitaly Jaros in the Ajax goal to deny Villarreal really early on, 2 set pieces. And Ajax still looks so vulnerable from a defensive perspective. They were torn apart in the Eredivisie the other day by Troy Parrott and AZ Alkmaar, and Villarreal really set about doing the same early on, but they couldn't find that breakthrough. And it's worth pointing out that this was a basement battle between 2 sides who have no real right to be in a basement battle. They should have both been better. Villarreal have been dreadful in this competition despite a really good domestic campaign. They couldn't find that breakthrough before half-time. And probably worth pointing out here that this was a relatively empty El Madrigal. Lots of yellow seats, which isn't a particularly good sign given how hard Villarreal worked to get back into the Champions League, right? And to be fair, those who decided not to turn up to the Ceramica missed an absolute corker of a goal from Tani Oluwaseyi just after the break. Ball played over the top. It's quite simple, but he spins his defender and he launches a volley over Jaros into the top corner from the edge of the box. A serious finish from a very, very talented footballer. And look, you can have your genuine questions about awful defending from young Aaron Burman at centre-back for Ajax. Spun way too easily after missing the header, but I'm also not going to lay it on too thick on an 18-year-old. But he gets just manoeuvred out of the way. And then the finish is absolutely glorious. But weirdly, that seemed to wake Ajax up, and they grabbed an equaliser just minutes later. A Gluck set piece deflected in with the keeper absolutely nowhere, flapping all over the place. And Villarreal's absolute dreadful turn in this season Champions League was compounded with just minutes to play when they conceded a second. And it was a substitute for Ajax, Edvardsen, who I don't know very much about, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I was surprised to find out he was 26, not 19. But he'd just come onto the pitch and he fired home from a guy he pulled back to give them hope in this competition still, which, to be fair, seemed absolutely hopeless just a couple of weeks ago. They've been desperate domestically. Fred Grimm has not turned things around. It has been grim by name, grim by nature in some ways. But they found late winners in the last 2 in Europe, and they've given themselves a lifeline. They go into that final day with the potential of sneaking into the playoffs. So who knows? But it really has been a miserable season from a Villarreal perspective. Let's get over to Kazakhstan, shall we? Kairat Almaty 1 at Club Brugge 4. And earlier on today, I was chatting with a couple of friends on WhatsApp, and we were talking about Kairat, and I used the phrase, there are no easy games in Kairat. Well, I would like to take that back, because this was about as easy as it got for Club Brugge. It wasn't the best start to this game, quite cagey, but to be expected, considering Brugge are struggling a bit domestically in Belgium at the moment. I will say this, 7 of Club Brugge's 11 tonight were 21 or under which is pretty impressive.
Wow.
But also,
that
obviously, the business model. There are going to be up and down years with that. And they brought on a couple more youngsters off the bench. There were I think it was in the entire squad of 18, I think there were 5 players over the age of 26, which is pretty stunning in so many ways. And look, shouts out to the travelling support, because given how bloody cold it is in Almaty, it got to minus 30 degrees this week in Kazakhstan. That's a hell of a travel. It's a hell of a long way, and also really not preferable conditions is probably what I would put.
Why was it played so early in the day? Is it because it got colder at night, or what?
They're about 6 hours ahead of us, mate.
I know, but they never seem like this one seemed particularly early compared to like.
There's been a couple of 3:30 UK kickoffs in the competition when Kairat have been at home. So I think they can play the 5:45, but when they have the opportunity,
fair enough. I just wanted
try to play it.
Reason.
Yeah, no, I think that's effectively about 7:30 Kazakh time, but I'm not completely sure on that, so I would have to check it. But anyway, the visitors went quite close to opening the score in about 20 minutes. Great strike from Mamadou Diakon from the edge of the area. Remember that name. He's going to feature a lot in this little report. Curled it beautifully. Thumped back off the post. It would have been nice because it would have been his first Champions League goal since match day 1. And his opportunities have become a little bit limited this season after starting the season quite well. But he and that seem to give Brugge a bit of a new lease of life. Vermont struck narrowly wide after a dangerous passage down the right, fizzled out, and they did finally take the lead in quite bizarre fashion after winning a hugely contested free kick. The crowd is deeply unhappy with this. It was Diakon again who was fouled. He drew so many fouls today. And whilst the initial delivery from Vetlesen, and by the way, one of the veterans of this team at 25 years old, was pretty poor. He got the ball back and the second one was much better. The Kairat keeper, Anabakov, punched it with 2 hands. It fell to the feet of one Alexander Stankovic. And if you remember that name, it's because his dad was old Dejan Stankovic, who was partial to lumping the ball into the back of the net from serious distances. Now, this was only the edge of the box, but his dad could strike a ball. It turns out so can he, because he thumps this home with a rising drive on the half volley. Really good strike. And that gave some verve to Brugge. Carlos Forbes raced away, but his pass was a little bit weak, and it was cut out by some defending, and they wouldn't wait too long to double their lead. Forbes recovers the ball on the right, swings in a deep cross, and Jurkin Says, who is a player I really like playing at fullback in this team, nods it down across the box for Hans Vanaken, who's an actual veteran, to tuck away from all of 3 yards. And it pretty much felt 40 minutes in that the game was done and dusted. Brugge really dominated after the break. They should have added a third a long time before they actually did, but it came 15 minutes from time. Diakon again, causing all the damage, bursts down the left, leaves his mark of a dead before squaring for Romeo Vermont, who's found some real form in recent weeks to tap home with an easy one. His 10th goal of the campaign in all competitions, but Diakon was the star man here. Unplayable, absolute box of tricks on that left wing. Brugge added another one in, salt in the wound. Mekala heading home across from Vanaken. But Kairat did, I will say this, give their fans one moment of magic with the last kick of the game. Took a lofted pass, Sadibakov on the instep, and then cracked a 25-yard volley in off the post to restore a touch of respectability. But Brugge worthy winners, and they remain in contention for a playoff spot, although you'd imagine they're going to have to win their final game at home against Marseille in order to make sure that they're there.
Very good, mate. That was, again, a very good, thorough review. I mean, your brain must genuinely explode on nights like this, because I can barely keep the information from the game I watched 10 minutes ago. And this was a game you watched like 3 games ago, which was like...
That was a bit easier because I was only watching one game at that moment.
Yeah, but like loads of games have happened since then. So that must feel like it was on like Saturday.
Yeah. Well, you know, we just store it all up and we spit it all out, the sponge in many ways.
Two more to go. My brain doesn't work anymore.
2 more to go. I'll let you go. Olympiacos won 2-0 against Bayer Leverkusen. Incredible atmosphere in Piraeus as ever. And the fans seem to like lift their side into an early lead against a Leverkusen who are absolutely all over the place at the moment. Bit of a blip from them. Costinha heading in front from a corner in about the 2nd minute. I don't know what Leverkusen were marking, but it wasn't the Olympiacos players, I can say for sure. They did start to gain some control, Leverkusen, after about 20 minutes, and they started to create their own opportunities. And look, I never miss an opportunity to give him praise. Alex Garcia looking very, very tidy in the middle as ever. I think he's a wonderful, wonderful footballer. Leverkusen's best chance fell to Lucas Vazquez in the 44th minute, just before halftime. The perfect time to score an equaliser, Dean. He's found by Ernest Poku. It seemed impossible to miss. It's one of those you're like, oh dear. Somehow he found a way. And Olympiacos got the ball, raced down the field, and found Mehdi Taremi, and he smashed the ball past Blažević for 2-0 on the stroke at halftime. And Vazquez must have wanted the ground to open up and eat him. Look, Leverkusen came out with renewed purpose, but an imperious performance from Konstantinos Zoulakis, the young Greek goalkeeper. I thought he was magnificent in this game. Some brilliant saves to keep Leverkusen at bay in the second half. And as the hour mark came up, it felt like Leverkusen's energy and desire, to be honest, wilted a little bit. Olympiacos' midfield started to find the control they'd really lacked. And Santiago Hetzer, another player I really like, was immense in the second half of this one. And look, a little shout out for Ayoub El Kaabi, by the way. He played 80 minutes for Morocco in the AFCON final on Sunday, flew back to Greece, and then came on here to help his team see this one through. That is serious, serious commitment. And I absolutely love that, especially given the emotional trauma of what happened in that game for him.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, that's extreme.
Yeah, incredible. Absolutely incredible. So shouts out to him. No wonder he's so loved in Piraeus. There was one last stop from Zoulakis to deny Schick late on, which preserved a very well-earned clean sheet for him and a first home Champions League win this campaign for Olympiacos, which keeps them very much alive going into the final day. And the final game, Dean, was between Copenhagen and Napoli, a game that ended 1-1. Napoli, by the way, are in major danger of total elimination, because they're on the edge of this playoff zone after only getting a draw against 10-man Copenhagen. They will be devastated. And Chelsea go to Naples next week. Napoli needs something from that game to keep themselves alive. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I didn't realise that, to be honest.
Yeah, this looks a little bit uncomfortable. Look, quite a quiet start to this game. Both teams a bit on the edge, and look, in terms of elimination. So it was very cagey. Copenhagen in particular pretty deep in their defensive shape. A couple of early opportunities for Napoli squandered, but half chances really more than anything else. Strikes from the edge of the area or around there. And then the game really seemed to break open when Thomas Delaney was sent off after a VAR check for a dangerous challenge. I told you there'd be a red card, but I disagreed with. This is the one. Like, it felt really harsh. He slides in and he wins the ball, and then in the follow through his leg flicks up and he catches his opponent on the knee, and you're like, but he's won the ball. And like, it's not a nice challenge in terms of it's not a nice challenge in terms of the contact he actually makes. I get it. I get why he's been sent off, but like, he's won the ball and then he's flicked up. He's clearly not done that. I think he's trying to pull out the challenge. It's one of those.
This is what I mean. Common sense has to come back, Jack.
Look, I think more than the other one, more than the Odebear one, this one did feel like there could be actual lasting damage because of it. It's not a nice connection, but I don't think there's any sort of way that he's trying to pull out and he's won the ball already. It feels difficult for me. And look, it went from bad to worse for the Danes minutes later because Napoli took the lead, and who else but Scotty McTominay glancing in a header from an Elmas corner, which really silenced Parkin. And that's very, very difficult to do. At that point, to be honest, it felt like Napoli couldn't lose this game. They'd had like 70% of the ball. They were now both a goal and a man up, and the chances really did begin to flow. And look, it remained similar at the start of the second half. Patience from Napoli, trying to draw out Copenhagen. They didn't really nibble too much on that. And there were opportunity after opportunity for Napoli. Not loads and loads of clear-cut chances, but opportunities starting to flow. And then the flashpoint out of nowhere, Buongiorno, who's, I think is an excellent defender, but there's no need for this. He fouls Elyounoussi in the box with a completely unnecessary challenge, like shoulder in the back, leg across him. It's a stonewall penalty. And you're like, what have you done? Why have you done that? Copenhagen were wilting in terms of the energy that they had. Now, Milinkovic-Savic actually saves Jordan Larsson's penalty, but he palms it back into the middle, and Larsson was like, thank you very much. That has saved me some big, big blushes. And he tucks home that rebound with glee and then shoves his face in a camera, which I wouldn't be doing if I just missed the penalty, to be honest. But alas, a moment. And from that moment, it felt like Copenhagen got a real energy boost. They battled away. Katarski in goal made a couple of really good saves, notably one from an Oliveira header. And Lucas spoon one over the bar, which is good news for Forest fans who are listening. And when a Napoli free kick was hoofed clear in the last minute, the referee blew the whistle. And another frustrating European night for Antonio Conte, who now really needs to beat his old club, if I'm being honest.
Wow. Yeah, that was a surprise. I saw McTominay was a big feature actually over here in America because they did a big sit down with him before the game. And obviously, he scored the goal. And then Mika Richards started messaging him during the game to see if he'd come on and talk after the game. And then McTominay did come on after the game. It was a big McTominay loving, but ultimately that wasn't a very good evening for him, was it? And he did seem a bit glum afterwards. So
he was pretty yappy leaving the field. He had a few things to say to some of the Copenhagen players, I will say. But yeah, it was a frustrating night for Napoli. And there have been a few of them in this competition. So yeah, another disappointing one for Antonio Conte. And there you have it. There's all 9 games.
Very good, mate. Thank you so much. Hope you, Rank Squad, have enjoyed it too. As you said, Jack, we won't be back Wednesday, but we will be back Thursday, huh?
Yeah, we'll be back on Thursday. With just an accidental double booking that's happened in the chaos of Christmas and New Year and me being away. So I apologise, but we'll be back on Thursday to look back at all of Wednesday's games and give you the lowdown. And look, doesn't mean I'd have to do it live, so that's quite something. It'll be a bit more spread out. In terms of the
true.
Details.
Actually, yeah.
So we'll have a think about how it all plays out. But plenty for us to get through and some very interesting games on Wednesday that we will get through. But for now, thank you so much to Mr. Dean Jones.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you so much for listening, Rank Squad. As Dean said earlier in the podcast, if you fancy coming and joining us on Patreon for 2026, we would love to have you. You get about 3-4 extra episodes every week. We do a post box where we look back at all the Premier League action. Dean does a on the whistle kind of thing on Sunday where he looks back at everything and the kind of raw emotion of the weekend. I do a walkthrough for a variety of things across Europe and beyond as well. And then there's a weekend preview show that goes out every Friday as well. So much over there. We'd love to have you over on the Patreon. Link is in the description as ever. But if not, we will see you on Thursday, Rank Squad, for the second Champions League takeaway this week. For now, take it easy. Peace.
This podcast is brought to you by Avocado Mattress. And if healthy, comfortable sleep matters to you, this is one organic brand worth knowing. That's because what you sleep on actually matters.
Most mattresses rely on synthetic foams and chemical materials that trap heat, break down over time, or off-gas. Avocado does it differently. Their mattresses are handcrafted with natural materials, organic latex, organic wool, and organic cotton, designed to be naturally cooling, incredibly supportive, and long-lasting. They're certified organic by GOTS and meet multiple non-toxic and safety certifications. Made for people who care about their health and the environment without sacrificing comfort. I love that Avocado proves you don't have to choose between comfortable, supportive sleep and your values. And now you can get up to 15% off all Avocado mattresses. Just go to avocadogreenmattress.com. Get up to 15% off at avocadogreenmattress.com. avocadogreenmattress.com.